Hi, and welcome everyone. I'm Dr. Lee Wood with One-on-One Chiropractic Coaching. And welcome to the second in a series of webinars on transitioning your practice towards cash. Last webinar, we had as our guest, Dr. Christopher Kent, and we talked about the whys and the why nots. And today we have a guest that I'm so happy to be with, literally the expert, arguably the most knowledgeable and most experienced person on the planet relative to a cash practice. He's the CEO and founder of Cash Practice Systems. He's an international speaker. He's known as the king of patient retention. In his own practice, he had an office visit average of over 300. Now, I've coached hundreds of chiropractors all over the planet, and I got to tell you, that is a record. So I'm very excited to have with us Dr. Miles Bodson. Miles, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Am I coming through clear? You guys can hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. Thanks for joining us, Miles. We're going to pick your brain today. So I look forward to get started right into it. The first question I want to ask you is going to give them a little foundation, and that's, how did you get into chiropractic to begin with? Let's start with that.
Sure. I love being asked this question. And I'll do my best to keep it within a short time frame for our listeners. But I was called to chiropractic, like many of us in our profession. It's a calling, and my calling came after a search. What I mean by that is I was a 19-year-old kid in college. I was studying to be an electrical engineer, and I woke up at the beginning of my senior year of engineering, and I've shared this story many times. I woke up basically realizing, wow, this is not what I want to do. I almost felt like I was following someone else's path. Like someone else had laid out this path of engineering for me. And I just had this realization that, man, this isn't really what I want to be doing in life. And with that sudden unsettling feeling as a 19, 20-year-old kid in college, I did what I would normally do when I was stressed out. And I left class and I went to the beach and surfed. You know, I live in San Diego just like yourself. Went down to Pacific Beach and did some surfing. And after I was done surfing, I was, cleared my head and I decided I got to figure out what I'm going to do. What's going to happen with my life? And I had a backpack with me, pulled out a pad of paper and a pen. And you can imagine a kid sitting on the beach with a pad of paper and a pen. That was me sitting there. And I started writing out, not goals per se, but I just kind of started writing out, what the hell do I want to do when I grow up? What do I want to be? How do I want to live my life? If that isn't engineering, what is it? And it got me to be kind of, I would say, for lack of a better word, really clear on what at least with somewhat clarity, I should say, for a kid that age, of what I wanted to be when I grow up. And it wasn't suddenly that chiropractic called me at that moment, but I had been using chiropractic care, getting chiropractic on a pretty regular basis at that point in my life. I had first experienced chiropractic when I was 12 years old. I had injured my neck visiting some family in the Northeast, diving into a pool. And after several weeks of suffering with neck pain, my parents in Florida took me to a chiropractor. And that was my first experience with chiropractic, was that feeling of, getting relief. And, it was all the pain model at that time for me at a young age. But I was visiting my chiropractor at this time in college where I came to the realization, wow, I think this is awesome. What he's doing is exactly what I just wrote on that sheet of paper. I got to help people. It was working with people. It was running their own business. It was, serving, and that kind of sense, like, wow, what this doctor's doing. He's really excited about it. And I should check this thing out, this chiropractor. I'm familiar with it. It seems really cool. Let me check it out. And I went back to my college and went to the library and looked up a book on healthcare, and there was a section on chiropractic in there. And in it talked about the power of the nervous system being the job of the chiropractor was to identify and remove these nerve system interferences, this electrical system of the body. And the fact that I had come from a world of electrical engineering, it kind of resonated with me all of a sudden, like, wow, you mean I could work with people in the electrical system of their body and help improve their lives and all of this. And it kind of just hit me like a ton of bricks, like, wow, this is something I could do. And I remember living at the time at the beach and with my girlfriend, who's my wife now, and her coming home from work and seeing me laying on the floor of our little apartment, kind of staring at the ceiling going, honey, what's up? What's going on? I said, honey, what do you think about me becoming a chiropractor? She's like, what? You're about to graduate as an engineer this year and get, start our lives. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't think I want to do it. And to her credit, she's like, if that's what you want to do. And so the next thing we knew, we were figuring out a way to get up to Northern California, to the Los Angeles area for me to start school. And, the rest is history. That's what got me into it, was this drive and this passion to do something I wanted to do with a clear vision. And that's the lesson there, is have a clear vision in life. But the other thing was that it was the message of chiropractic that drew me to it. It was like when I read this whole thing that the nervous system, the job of the chiropractor was to identify these nerve system interferences. And once you identify them, the goal of the chiropractor was to remove those nerve interferences and thus allow the body to heal and the body to function better, and you could help people. Man, that just struck me like a bolt of lightning, and that's what called me to the profession of chiropractic.
Well, that is absolutely wonderful to hear. In my coaching, that's exactly where we build the foundation of everything we do, is off of the chiropractic philosophy that the body is a self-healing, self-regulating mechanism, and that the nervous system does control it, and any interference is bad, and we clear that interference out. So that is a foundational piece, and I think that's an important piece, even when we're talking about collecting money. The moral to your story, though, is go surfing, right? I mean, basically, that's the moral to your story.
Yeah. Yeah, even when it comes to collecting cash. And, and oftentimes people, again, they introduce me as, quote unquote, the cash practice expert, as you so graciously did. But at the end of the day, cash is just a symptom. It's a side effect of the real purpose, which is we're here to provide wellness care. We're here to help people. And you can't do that in an effective manner without being cash-based. It's just, that's the business model you have to apply in order to deliver the product, which is wellness care. If for lack.
Yeah, it's incongruent. It's incongruent to think that insurance is going to be involved through their entire care. I mean, certainly sometimes insurance is important and people utilize it, but everyone should be under a cash plan. And because of our belief and our philosophy that you need to be under lifetime chiropractic care.
Absolutely,
So,
it starts from that.
So
Yeah.
tell me about how the early days. Tell me about the early days in practice. Did you start right off on cash, or were you in the insurance business with let's make a deal?
Yeah, so back in, let me paint a picture. I graduated in '93. I was starting in practice in '94. So after I finished my clinical requirements in school very early, and I was able to move back to San Diego where I wanted to be, and I ended up doing a preceptorship for a short time with a doctor out in El Cajon, in San Diego here. And after a few months of doing that, I met another doctor who I ended up going to work for after I graduated. I wasn't licensed. I did the typical, associate with someone until you get your license type thing. And the one piece of advice I'll share with the viewers, if you're still in school, that I didn't get, and I wish I did, is interview lots and lots of doctors, because I ended up working for a doctor at the time that it seemed like a good opportunity. But when I got there, not that it wasn't a good opportunity, it just wasn't the philosophy that I wanted. It was a typical work comp PI type practice, and it wasn't bad. I learned a lot, but it wasn't. If I had the choice of that versus other offices, I would have loved to have the opportunity, and I didn't make the effort to visit lots of offices. So then when I meet young students now that are doing that, my hat's off to you, because I think it's great to do that, to make sure you get lots of exposure to different.
That's great advice. That's absolutely great advice.
Yeah, I share that because I think it's really an important thing to do, because there's so much variety out there. And well, I was also at the same time I was visiting a local philosophy group here in San Diego. I'm sure it doesn't mind me giving a shout out to Ron Oberstein. Everybody knows Ron Oberstein. He used to give philosophy talks back in his practice many, many moons ago, 20 years or so ago. And I used to go to his monthly meetings. And I often say it was kind of like we have here in San Diego CORE, which is every month we have a different philosophy talk speaker that comes. I jokingly say it was like CORE, but every month it was the same speaker. It was Ron. So every month we had the same speaker. But anyway, at this philosophy group I was going to, I got to meet lots of chiropractors. And one of the chiropractors I met there turns out I met him there, and it's not that I met him there and he decided and asked me about buying his practice, but because I knew him through that, I received a letter in the mail. I'm sure he sent it to many chiropractors looking to sell his practice. And I was still working for this other doctor, and I had intended to work for this other doctor for a couple of years to get experience. But once I got the letter, I'm like, oh, I got to check this out. I got to see, is there an opportunity here? And I did. I checked out the practice, said, wow, this is cool. This is exactly what I would want as a practice. So long story short, even though I wasn't licensed yet, he negotiated with me on the practice, and literally the day my license arrived in the mail, and this is back when we didn't have Part 4 boards, everybody took the California boards. Once I got the license in the mail, but literally the day it arrived, we signed the contract to buy the practice. And we did a 1 week transition, a whopping 1 week transition of me being there and him being there, and he was anxious to get out of town and go back to the East Coast with his wife. And so we did a 1 week transition, and 1 week after I bought the practice, I was in there by myself with my wife, and we were figuring things out. And I would be a liar if I said it was smooth and easy. It wasn't. It took a good couple of years to figure things out. We did struggle for the first couple of years. What I mean by that is the practice was healthy enough to support itself. It wasn't healthy enough to support us financially, personally. So it took some time, and I thought, we'd be able to build things up quick. And let me just share a little insight. I come from an engineering background, and doctors, if you've ever known an engineer, one common trait among engineers is we all think we could solve every problem ourselves. It's just kind of it's a craziness in our brain. So that handicap is I didn't seek outside help, and this is why I encourage doctors to get coaches so much these days, is because a coach will really help you achieve things faster. I wish I had done that when I first got out of school, and I didn't. And it took me a couple of years of really struggling, putting on my engineering hat, say, oh, I'll solve this. And my wife to this day still says that's one characteristic that gave us the success we had, is that no matter what we did, I constantly kept trying things until we figured it out eventually. I would have figured things out faster if I got help sooner, but nonetheless, we eventually did figure it out. To answer your question about insurance, this is the early 90s, and Lee, you know this because you're from Southern California too. The early 90s, this is where HMOs, PPOs, this is where it all started. So while the rest of the country was still celebrating the glories of the 80s and making a ton of money from insurance, here I am brand new in practice. Everybody's coming in with HMOs, everybody's coming with PPOs, and I'm not part of any of that. So I had to quickly figure out how do I create a practice where people pay for it when I'm not part of their insurance plans. So that's where it all started. I never participated in the world of I'm part of the PPOs or part of the HMOs. I did dabble for a brief time in the personal injury world, and I did quite well at it. In fact, I did quite a bit of expert witness testimony. I even had a judge after I did testimony come into me for care afterwards because he liked my testimony so much. I did really well in that world, but after about a year and a half of doing it, I realized that's not what got me into chiropractic. I wasn't happy doing it. So I left that and really started putting my thinking cap on how are we going to build a successful wellness-based practice where people not only start care, they complete care, and they transition to a lifetime of wellness care, not in theory, not because we said, yes, that's what we want to do, but in reality, that's what they actually did. And that's what I put my thinking cap on and said, we got to figure this out. And eventually we did figure it out. And there's a number of principles that I learned over time that we applied, and I applied in practice, that resulted in this super high patient retention. And ultimately, that's what I help doctors with now with our company Cash Practice, is we give them systems to apply these principles. But it's all based upon these fundamental principles we learned in practice. But the takeaway message here about those early days is that we had to figure out what to do in an insurance environment when we weren't participating in that insurance environment. And the one takeaway message there is I wish I would have gotten help sooner. I wish I would have asked for some outside help.
Well, I'm with you on that, although I think you've done one heck of a job. Let me ask you this question. Let's get down to the meat of it. Let's talk about collecting cash. What do you feel is the best way for docs to do that? And how important do you feel congruency, which we've been alluding to here, is relative to practice philosophy and cash plans?
Yeah, that's a great question. I could probably spend an hour on that topic alone, but I'll try to keep it short. I think the best way to collect cash is the way that helps the doctor and helps the patient. What I mean by that is this. The thing that I think helps both the doctor and the patient is when you're focusing on well, let me back up for a second. Let me use an example when I talk about it. When I often speak live in front of an audience, I'm doing on stage, I'll often ask the question, doctors, how many of you would be interested in learning a new clinical technique that I could teach you right now, that if you applied this technique, you would always get 15% better results with your patients? Who's interested? And of course, every hand in the audience goes up. Yes, we're all interested in doing better for our patients clinically, and I'm the same. Well, I then ask the question, and I think everybody listening will agree with me. How many of you would agree that one of the leading reasons patients don't get the full results, the full benefits of the care that we recommend, is because the patient fails to follow through with the treatment plan? That is probably the biggest reason patients don't get the full benefits. And it's also probably one of the biggest reasons doctors are frustrated, is that patients don't get it, they drop out of care, they go away when the pain goes away, all those things. And every hand goes up, yes, we'd like to, they agree with that sentiment, that the issue is that patients don't follow through. So when you ask about the question about collecting fees, I say this, then it makes sense that you do everything you can to build your business model in a way that builds patient retention, that doesn't get in the way of them staying under care, but in fact helps them stay under care. And there's a number of things that apply to retention, but there's everything from the way you do re-exams and communicate your re-exam findings. There's a bunch of things. There's the way you do patient education, but specifically in the world of collections, you want to do things, you don't want to do anything. Here's the takeaway message. You don't want to do anything consistently that reminds the patient of money. End of story. The more often patients think about the money in your practice, the more often they're likely to leave you in practice. That's just an observation we've seen, and it's not unique to chiropractic. That's true for any business out there, that the more often people think about the money, the transaction that they have to make in your business, the less often they're likely to continue to consume that service. So we want to remove the thought of money as much as possible. So as soon as you understand that principle, you go like, well, what are all the things that remind people of money? And let's remove them. Well, if they stop at the front desk every time to make a payment, that means every time they come in, they're thinking of money. If it's every 10 visits, you have them buy a new block of 10 visits, every time they get a re-exam, you want them to buy more visits. That's a thought of money every time they come in with a re-exam, that they have to buy more visits. If the intention is you do prepay programs, and I'm not against them, I just don't think it's the best option. That means at the end of the prepay, the patient has to make a decision. Do they buy again? Do they make another purchase? If it's you use care credit, and that means every month they get a bill in the mail reminding them of the payment, that sabotages your retention. If it's you send them statements in the mail every month expecting them to write you a check and mail you a payment, that gets in the way of retention because it reminds them of the money. So as soon as you get the principles, just like in chiropractic, there's a principle: remove nerve interference, the body works better. Well, then what do we have to do to remove nerve interference? Let's remove everything that does that. Well, the same thing with the business principle. If the principle is the thought of money interferes with retention, then what do we have to do to remove all the thought of money? And the only way we've been able to do that is to automate all payment processing, is to automate it. And you automate it into what they're used to doing. So here's what I mean by that. Most people are used to paying for large purchases on a monthly payment. That's across the board, whether it's cars, whether it's expensive furniture, whether it's a new TV. That's how people buy stuff. And you put it on their credit card or their bank account, and you automatically draft it every month. So it's not triggering, it's not top of mind awareness. Let me explain what I mean. Like if you use like a care credit or third-party financing, they get in the mail every month a bill for their chiropractic care. Versus if you embed their monthly payment into their bank statement or their credit card, they don't look at it as a credit card, a chiropractic bill. They look at it as their credit card bill with all this stuff on it. Or if it's their bank statement, it's a withdrawal from their bank account, but they don't look at it as a separate entity, as a general rule. And most of the things I'm sharing right now with the audience or the listeners right now is this is all stuff based upon behavioral psychology, which is the study of what drives human behavior, our behavior to do the things we do. So we want to remove all thought of money. So how do you do that? You automate everything. So let's give an example. You have a patient who comes in and decides to pay you visit by visit. That's what they elect to do because that's what they want. Not to say that's what you should do with every patient, but you have that person. Well, what you do with that scenario is you have that patient's credit card or their bank account information on file, and they sign a form to authorize this. And that means every time they come in, they don't stop at the desk to make the payment. The CA knows I'm going to go onto their system, into the computer system, and run a payment for 50, 60, 70 bucks, whatever it is, automatically without the patient having to stop at the desk to make the payment. That removes the patient's thought routinely of the money every time they walk in, is when you automate that process. It's no different than if a patient leaves an insurance card on file. You don't ask for their insurance card every time they walk in the door. You put it on file and you submit claims on an automatic basis based upon them coming in. No different with their credit card. You put it on file and you do that. It's not the best way of handling things on a per visit basis, but that's what, if you have a per visit patient, improve it by automating. Another scenario is the block of visits I mentioned, where they buy 10 or 12 visits at a time. A lot of doctors do it. I don't think it's a smart way of running your practice. I don't think it's the best way of doing it, because ultimately what ends up happening is after 2 or 3 blocks of visits, most patients drop out of care. And it's typically not because they're selling blocks of visit. It's typically the doctor who sells blocks of visits is also doing a treatment plan that says this: hey, let's get you started with care. Let's see how you do. I'll reevaluate you next month. I'll let you know what we need to do. And they do what we refer to as an open-ended treatment plan, which that's what actually sabotages the retention. It's not the fact that you're selling 10 visits at a time or 12 at a time, but I bring it up because generally the doctor who's doing 10 or 12 visit blocks is a doctor who's doing open-ended treatment plans. That's what sabotages the retention. So I just mentioned that at that point. But if you're going to do blocks of visits, if you are going to do it, you want to automate it. So instead of asking the patient every 10 visits, do you want to buy another 10 visits? You don't do that. You have them sign an authorization form that every 10th visit or every 12th visit, you automatically charge them for the next 10 or 12 visits. You don't ask them. It's not, it becomes a question, do you want to buy again? It becomes an automated recurring program, just that you charge them automatically for those next 10 or 12 visits. Ideally, the best scenario, so to get to the kind of what's best is you have a new patient who comes in and you're recommending a treatment plan. And your treatment plan is 6 months, 8 months, a year, whatever it is for that particular patient. And it's unique to that patient. By the way, and I'm sure Lee, you teach this, your treatment plan is a reflection of what you're trying to accomplish with your patients. Meaning if your goal of care is to correct the cervical curve, your treatment plan is going to be dictated by that. If your goal of care is simply pain relief, obviously it's a different treatment plan. So I always teach your treatment plan is a reflection of your goal of care, and your financial plan is a reflection of your treatment plan. So if your treatment plan is 6 months of care, then your financial plan should mirror that. It's a 6-month program of finances. If it's a year of care, then it's a year of financials. And it works simply like this. You package your care in a compliant way, and I don't know if we're going to get into that in this conversation, but there's a legal and compliant way. You can't just take all of your services, apply a discount, and arbitrarily put it out there. You can't just do what your buddy down the street does. To stay compliant and legal in today's world, you have to make sure you're using a compliant program. And for you doctors who are in California, you need to be aware of whatever program you are using. That program has to have been, that document has to have been submitted to the California Department of Managed Care and reviewed by their attorneys to verify it's compliant and legal. If you haven't done that, you're violating your chiropractic license right now. Besides that, it's not the state boards we have to be concerned about. It's more of the federal agencies like the OIG, for example. So without going into detail with that, just understand that when you build these plans, the way they're built is, in summary, is you itemize your services. There's certain services that may be covered by insurance, and there's certain services that are not covered by insurance. It's only the ones not covered by insurance that you're legally allowed to apply any kind of discount to. And there's certain rules and regulations about what kind of discounts you can apply. So you can't just make this stuff up. Let me just be clear about that. If you have questions about that, you should reach out to our company, Cash Practice, and talk to you about that. Or talk to Lee, and I'm sure he has the information as well. And if he doesn't, we could be a resource for that. The point being, though, is you don't just package together an arbitrarily applied discount. There's a legal way of doing this. But once you do that, let's make a summary. You itemize that list of services. Let's just call it an invoice. And you have that list of services, and it comes to X number of dollars. I'll just throw out a number, let's say $3,000. The best way of presenting that to a patient is that you have this program, and the patient now has 3 choices of paying for it. One choice is they could split it into monthly payments, and those monthly payments become automated. The second choice that we find very effective is where the initial payment is larger. They make a down payment followed by smaller monthly payments, and those, again, are automated. And then the third choice is, well, of course, if they want, they can prepay it. And that's, you have it as an option for them. We find that 80 to 90% of patients will choose one of the monthly payment options. If you've priced your practice, if things are set up properly in your office, 80 to 90% of your patients will choose that monthly payment option. And it serves you and the patient. Here's why it does. It serves you, doctor, because number one is those patients are likely to stay on the care plan because it's on a program. It's automated, so you're not reminding of the money. And when it comes to the transition to wellness, here's how it goes. Instead of me saying to my patient, Lee, hey, Lee, last year you paid us $3,600. It's time for you to renew. It's going to be $1,800 a year. And Lee has a decision to make. Instead of that conversation, I get to say to Lee, great news. You're ready to go to wellness care, and your $300 monthly payment is going down from $300 down to $175. And when you transition someone to wellness at the same time that you're lowering a monthly payment they've been making, like that, it's so easy for them to go to wellness care. And ultimately, when we look at the end game, the end result of doing these programs is the transition to wellness. That's where we've kind of won the game with this patient, is that if we want to think of it as a game, if you want to think of it that way, the game isn't won until they've actually made the transition. It isn't won by them saying yes to your treatment plan or report of findings. It's once they finish the plan and they transition to wellness. And that is the magic bullet of getting people to lifetime wellness care, is let them be on a monthly payment. And it's really nice if they made a down payment, of course. That's a little bit of a prepay, but they're still on a monthly payment. And you have the opportunity to lower that monthly payment at the time they transition to wellness. That, by far, is the most powerful way we've observed to have people go into wellness care. And, of course, during that 6, 8, 12 months of care, you're doing all the right things. You're reevaluating them. You're giving them proper feedback during the reevals. You're doing proper patient education with a drip education system. You're doing things to do all the stuff you need to do along the way, so when the transition happens, it's really easy. I hope that answers the question specifically, but I think you'll see that serves both the patient by the fact that they're staying under care and they're going to get the results they need. You're also making it affordable. It serves you, the doctor, because you're keeping the patient. And by the way, every doctor that we have that says, I have $40,000, $50,000 a month of recurring revenue coming in because of all these people paying me monthly payments, they sleep great at night. And here's why they sleep so well. They don't have to worry if insurance disappears tomorrow, and they don't have to worry about new patients showing up, because their practice revenue doesn't change whether a new patient shows up or not. When you have hundreds of people paying you a monthly fee to come into a program like this on care, you don't care whether you get new patients. So you get off the new patient marketing bandwagon that you constantly have to be on when you run a practice this way. So I often say, not only do we help free you from the shackles of insurance dependence, We also help free you from the dependence on getting new patients all the time. And you end up having this experience of a practice where you just have this big mammoth group of people who are not leaving you because you've made it so easy for them. I can go on and on about the subject, but I'm going to stop for a second and turn it back to you, Lee, because I'm sure you have some questions per se.
Well, that's brilliant. And not only is it brilliant, but it is totally congruent with the philosophy that people are better off under long-term care. If you can keep them under longer care, they get better health, they have better function, they have better chance for longevity. And the fact is that, you know, chronic subluxations, it causes disease over time and early death in every situation. So what would be more motivating for us than to go out and spread our message and have it congruent with the way people are going to actually pay for it? So I think it's fantastic. Thank you. That was a great answer. Here's another question for you. There are companies that promote selling your accounts payable, so you kind of get paid up front. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I love this. There is a company that's specific, I won't mention their name, but there's a company that's out right now that, you know, offers payment processing for their members, and that's great because we, you know, same philosophy. But a big thing they push is them buying out or giving you the ability to buy out your accounts receivable. What I mean is they say, you know, if you have, let's say, I'll use the example, you have a $300 monthly payment that's coming in, so you're due to get, you know, $3,000 in the next 10 months. They'll say to you, well, if you'd like, we'll go ahead and give you, based upon the risk of your accounts and based upon all these factors, they'll say, we're going to give you $2,600 or $2,500 now, and you get the money now, but then they go ahead and collect the monthly payments. And there's money for them to be made in that. Obviously, they're going to make $600 on that deal in that example. The reason I think it's so bad and it's a trap for doctors is because ultimately when you're building a business, and let's take it aside of chiropractic, you're building a business. The lifeblood of every business is your recurring revenue. It is by far the most important part of the future health of your business. And every doctor I know that doesn't have that recurring revenue, and they just basically, they kill what they eat, they're constantly getting new patients, they're constantly, you know, churning that income, the stress never goes away. And the health of your, every healthy practice I know, every successful practice has that in common, where they have a good, substantial amount of recurring revenue. So it's not that it's bad to, you know, I understand this. If you're in a situation where you need a lump sum of money because you want to buy a new piece of equipment and you can't get financing somewhere else, and the only place in the world you're going to get a lump sum of money to make that purchase is to sell some of your accounts receivable, by all means, go do it. There's other ways of doing that. Let me give you an example. You don't need to be using a company. That you can actually do it with your merchant company, your credit card company. A lot of times credit card companies will advance you money on your credit card processing, and then they over time will take that money back as you run transactions. Whether you do it that way or whether you sell your accounts receivable to one of these other companies, it's expensive. It costs you a lot of money. You're giving away. So for example, like I said, the $3,000 plan, you might give up $500 or $600 out of that profit for them to give you the advance. So it's very expensive. But more importantly, that it kills your future revenue. And I believe that's really the biggest issue. And here's the other thing it does. Whenever you go to sell a practice, let me just say this. When you go to sell a practice, if you're in the market to sell one, a big part of the value of your company is your future earnings. Your future earnings. And when you sell accounts receivable, yes, you received it, but you've just devalued your company. You've devalued it. So if you wanted to, let's say I want to sell my practice, which would you rather buy? A practice that says we earn $40,000 a month by getting new patients all the time, and there's no guarantee that you're going to have $40,000 a month moving into the future, but it's still making $40,000 a month, or a practice that's getting $40,000 a month recurring whether a new patient shows up? Which one has more value? They both have the same earnings, they both have the same past earnings, but they do not have the same future guarantee of earnings. Which one has more value? Absolutely the one with future revenue predicted. Time and again, they will have a higher factoring value of that company, that practice, versus the other one. So whenever you sell your accounts receivable, you're really sabotaging the health of your practice financially in many, many ways. So I say it's there. It's a good tool to use if, in fact, you need money and you have no other way of getting it. If that's not the case, do not stick your hand in the cookie jar and take the money out of your savings or the money out of your future by taking that money now. It's a big mistake in business. That's my opinion on it.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That's also very astute on your part. Because it is a business.
Lee, let me say one more thing about it. I recently had one of our clients who was opening a second practice, and he was getting financing from the bank to open the second practice. And he was running into some snags where the things were moving slow, and it wasn't sure he was going to get the full financing of the practice. He then went back in his business proposal to the bank and simply showed them a report of the future revenue guaranteed. And I say guaranteed, you know, that's scheduled to occur. All of this recurring revenue. That simple report sealed the financing. That was all it took, was them to finally say, all right, no problem, we're financing. Because he's able to show documentation that showed they had future revenues, that he hadn't sabotaged it by sucking all that money out of the company. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely it gives value. It builds a bigger margin of goodwill, if you will.
Yes.
So fantastic. Now, there's a lot of confusion on the topic of what's legal and what's not, and you alluded to some of that. Can you give us a little more clarity on what we really need to watch out for? Because I think there's a lot of chiropractors out there that create these plans that, number one, are not philosophically sound to what they believe, that a patient should be under care for a lifetime, but also they're not sound from a standpoint of legality. So is there any clarity you can give us to prevent any problems?
Absolutely. Yeah, let me make it really clear about legality stuff. Let me first outline the things you should not be doing so you're clear across the board, and I'm going to give you the reasons why. Let me address the first one, and that is the membership practice, or the UCAP, unlimited care to fixed fee. These types of programs are often done out there where doctors say, you know, pay me a monthly fee, come as much as you want, type of thing. Let me explain why that's not legal. The reason it's not legal to do that type of program is because there's an assumption of risk. And here's what I mean by that. The risk is this. If a doctor says, come in as much as you want for $200 a month, let's just say, there's a potential the patient may come in every day, which means there's financial risk to the doctor. Financial risk is you're coming in more than what you've actually paid for in value. There's risk to the doctor to provide more care. On the other side of it, you might say, well, the patient pays you $200 a month and they don't come in at all, or maybe they only come in once. So there's financial risk to the patient that they may come in, pay that fee and not fully utilize the service. So the definition is there is risk there. And anytime there's risk, that is known as the business of insurance. And we as individual providers cannot act like an insurance company. That's what an HMO does, right? An HMO is you pay them a set fee every month. They take the risk. You may show up every day and they're gonna lose money on you. Or you may not show up at all and they're gonna make money on you. That's the business of health insurance. And we as individual practitioners, we are not licensed and regulated like an insurance company, and thus we cannot act as an insurance company. It is for that reason we cannot do these membership type practices, because there's an assumption of risk. That's the reason for it. So if you and your practice are doing any type of program where you're basically saying come in as much as you want or as little as you want for a set fee, unlimited care to fixed fee, I promise you it's not legal. And not only is it not legal, I have cases of doctors who have gone to court and have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in lawsuits as a result of this. Had probation with licenses, all kinds of issues as a result of it. So stay away from it. That's number one. That from a legality I wanted to answer. The next thing that's not legal to do, there is no such thing, doctors, as a cash fee. Let me be clear on this. There is no such thing as an insurance fee, and here's my cash fee. When I hear doctors say, here's my cash fee, immediately you're setting up a red flag. There is no such thing of it. In the world of legalities, let me just be clear on this. It has really everything in the world to do with how your discounts apply. How your discounts apply. It has nothing, there's really no regulations legally from the standpoint of how you collect your fees, whether you collect them one visit at a time, or you have people prepay, or whether they buy 10 visits at a time, or whether they do monthly auto debits. How you collect the money is really of no concern legal-wise. What's of concern is what you're charging or what your discounts are. That's where the legalities hit. And let me explain what I mean. So your fee is, let's say this, and Larry Markson had said this a billion years ago, and your fee is your fee is your fee is your fee. We've all heard him say that, and that is the case. Your fee is the same. From a legal standpoint, your fee is the same. So let's use an adjustment, a 98940, whatever, an adjustment. What is that fee? Let's call it $60. That is your fee. Whether someone walks in with insurance, whether they walk in with cash, it doesn't matter. That's what your fee. The question is, are you allowed to discount that fee for, let's say, quote unquote, a cash patient or someone who doesn't have insurance? Let's just say that. And the answer is yes, you're allowed to discount it as long as it's not a covered service. So let me be clear on this. What you're allowed to provide, and I'm going to say something more about this, but what you're allowed to discount is a non-covered service. If it is covered, it is not allowed to be discounted. It's only non-covered service. So that means if you have what's considered non-covered, or what's considered covered, I should say. Well, if it's a service that you're applying to a deductible, if it's a service with a copay, anything to do with insurance, it's a covered service. whether the patient's paying a copay or whether they're paying it towards a deductible, it's a covered service. That is not allowed to be discounted. It's only the visits or services that are not covered that are allowed to be discounted. So what are you allowed to do discount-wise legally? Well, what you're allowed to do is you're allowed to, this is based upon the OIG, the Office of the Inspector General, which is the big daddy, the federal government that basically give us, those are the guys you have to be worried about. They're going to be showing up, with, to cause issues for you. You don't want to mess with these guys. This is who you don't want to. This is who you be. Don't worry about your state board. This is who you need to worry about. State board. Doctors are always, what does my state board say? Doesn't really matter what your state board says to the most degree from the standpoint of this stuff. What matters is state laws on insurance regulations and federal regulations. Here's what the issue is. So the OIG basically has said this. They had an opinion letter. They wrote an opinion letter a number of years ago. It was probably about 5-6 years ago. That prior to this, there wasn't really an opinion on it, but now there is. And the opinion says this: if you're going to apply a discount for non-covered services, what they deem as appropriate, what we would call a bookkeeping discount or a time of service discount, you can call it whatever you want. It doesn't really matter the name. But what's appropriate is a 15%, at most a 15% discount on those non-covered services. I've heard some people push it as high as 20% and not, make an issue of it. But we basically, as a general rule, say 15% is what you want to cap it at. So let's go back to our quote-unquote cash patient who walks in. If your fee is $60, at the most you could discount it would be 15%. And while the doctor said, that's fine, I can do that, that's okay, and that's not an issue. And it is, and it's fine. You can do a 15% discount on those non-covered visits, and you're going to be just fine with that. Now, the challenge is if you're in a practice where you're still doing insurance, and you are in a place where you can get maximum reimbursement from an insurance company, you're still getting paid well, maybe Alaska or somewhere in the country where you're getting paid really well by insurance still. And you have a patient come in for an adjustment, and you do therapy and a rehab on them, and your visit's $175. And that's what you should get paid, because that's what the insurance company covers, and there's no reason that's what the MD will get paid. You should be getting paid that as well. How do you do that and still provide that same service to a cash patient and have it affordable for them? Meaning you want to still provide that same level of service, but maybe you don't expect to get $175. Maybe you want to be able to get $100 or $75 for that same amount of service for the non-insured patient. That's where the challenge is a lot of doctors, this is where they get themselves in trouble. They do things like, well, they either quote unquote down code, which is not legal, or they do things like they say, well, if you're cash, we won't charge you for the therapy. We won't, I'll just charge you for the adjustment and not the therapies. First of all, that's not legal. Why is that not legal? Because anything you do like that, if I said I'm not charging for my therapy, that's no different than me saying I'm going to give you a 100% discount on therapy. Well, you can't give a 100% discount. We just said you can't give a discount more than 15%. So you can't do a free service type of thing. That's not, again, because it violates that law from the standpoint of, not law, but that rule from the standpoint, that regulation from the standpoint of not going above the 15% discount. So what do? Well, the only way to do that, I'll kind of throw a shout out to another company. There's another company we work with called Chiro Health USA. Chiro Health USA is a discount medical plan organization. We work hand in hand with them. In essence, what they do is they give you the ability, by using their service, you become a contracted provider for them. And through the contract that you have with this company, I'll call them CHUSA for keep it simple. CHUSA is a regulated industry. They're regulated just like an insurance company, like Blue Cross or Blue Shield. And by becoming a provider for them, you can actually do a provider agreement where you're allowed to extend a higher discount. You might have an agreement that says, we offer a 30% discount and a cap of $60 a day. And that becomes your contracted rate for these patients. So without going into the details, I just want to mention that's one solution for it. But to answer the question about the legality stuff, here's what I want to just kind of leave the doctor with. It has to do with how you discount your services. It has nothing to do with the way you collect your fee. For the most part, you don't have to worry about from the standpoint, how am I collecting them? Prepay is okay. That's not really the issue. The issue is, how are you applying a discount? And let me just be clear, there's only 3 ways you can discount. One is I mentioned already, where you can apply that in-house discount of like 10 or 15%. That's one way of doing it. Well, actually, that would be a 4th way. There's actually, yeah, that's one way. Another way is by mandate. Mandate is Medicare, work comp, where they mandate this is the fee schedule. Well, Medicare is saying, we pay $35. Let's use that as an example. Your fee is still $60. You've just agreed by accepting Medicare that you're going to discount it by 25. Your fee isn't 35. You've just agreed to write, to discount it. That's by mandate. That's one way. Another way is by contract. Contract is I'm a provider for Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Aetna, whatever. By being a contract with an insurance company, I've agreed to discount my services. I've agreed to accept $22 instead of 60, whatever it is. That's what Chiro Health USA falls under, because they act the same as an insurance company. You've signed a contract that allows you to have this higher discount. And the third way that I want to spend a moment on is hardship agreements. Hardship agreements is what is an often way a doctor gets himself in trouble. Doctors often say, well, hardship, you're a cash patient, so you're a hardship. That's not the case. That's not the way hardship works. Hardship is based upon a category, not a way people pay. Meaning you can't say someone's hardship because they're cash. You could say they're hardship because they fall within the government guidelines of poverty, maybe 100% of the government poverty guidelines, and that's what you put them in hardship. But it's not because they're a cash patient. Or you could say they're a hardship because they're part of the military, or because they're a clergy, or because they're a police officer, or because they're a single parent, or because they're a college student. The nice thing about hardships is you can come up with your own rules as to what a hardship is, and you can give them whatever discount you want. Whatever you want, you're allowed to do. But be aware, if I have a patient who falls under hardship because they're a single parent, and I've been discounting their services from $60 down to $30 a visit, and now my hardship patient who has been paying me that gets in a car accident, in a PI case now. The mistake doctors make is they say, you're no longer hardship, you're now PI, so you're going to be $60 a visit. That's what gets them in trouble, because they're still hardship. They're still in the category of single parent. So they still get the discount, which means the PI case, they still get the discount. And that's what will get doctors in trouble, is they do the discount when the quote-unquote patient is paying for it. As soon as someone else is paying for it, they eliminate it. And that's not legal to do that. You have to apply the hardship to the category that the patient falls in, and it's not dependent upon who's paying for the care. So I know I threw a lot of stuff out there, but there's a lot of areas that I want to point out that doctors can get themselves in trouble with, but there's solutions to make this really easy for you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that stuff up, because I'll guarantee you 90% of chiropractors out there have made at least one of those mistakes. So I'm glad you brought it up. I've got one more question for you, and it's kind of a loaded question, and that is, how important is coaching through the process of transitioning towards cash? What do you feel about coaching?
I think coaching is a very valuable thing for doctors to do. I already mentioned how I had wished, in my early days of practice, that I had reached out to some coaches to give me some guidance. I'm sure I would have had the success I had much faster. It's just a question of, if you want to get from point A to Z, and Z is success, how fast do you want to get there? How fast? And oftentimes we just don't know what we don't know. And what you don't know will hurt you oftentimes. So yeah, I think it's very valuable to get coaches. And I don't think it's important just to get one coach. I think you should have a variety of coaches. I think you should get a number, someone who can help you in the communication. And if that same person can help you in, clinical aspect, great. If you need someone to guide you and assist you in the business model and the legalities, then you get that help. I think it's valuable to do that. And, in the process of transitioning CAS, absolutely. From the standpoint of when people become our clients, we don't act as a coach, our company per se, but we certainly coach you through the process of using our software and our systems. But from the standpoint of someone kind of being there to guide you through the process, it's always valuable to do that. So yeah, doctors, when you're watching, I always encourage people to get coaches. I think it's a very smart move to do that. I think the idea of going through life and saying I can figure it all out myself and do it myself and I'll hold myself accountable, I think I personally think that's foolish to do that. When we always point to the professional athlete, who has a coach. It's a very common analogy to make. They're professional. They know what they're doing, but they're still being coached. And I often bring up is like, what's the difference between a professional athlete, like a baseball player at spring training, versus a little league team? When you watch them, they're doing the exact same thing. They're all doing the same stuff. They're being coached on the basics. Practice, 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 doing it over. And once you get good at it, well, you're going to continue practicing those basics, because you never stop becoming a master of the basics. In fact, if you don't become a master of the basics in chiropractic, which is your report of findings, your treatment plans, your financial plans, you don't become a master of your patient education, you don't master the basics, then I often say you're a chiropractic hobbyist. You're not taking this as a profession. You're not taking it seriously unless you are getting the help you need to become a professional at it. And if you're not working on it and working with people to give you feedback, you're often spinning your wheels. Are there exceptions? Are there the people out there who just master without it? Of course there's the exceptions, but I'm not speaking to the exception. I'm speaking to the person out there which is Joe chiropractor, Mary chiropractor, the Joe average out there. We all need help. It's, I think it's very valuable. Absolutely. So yeah, it was a little bit of a loaded question coming from a coach, but that's okay. You know, do I think people should have cash practice our company? Yeah, it's a loaded question. Absolutely, I think you should. You should become our client. Absolutely. Should you work with Lee? Absolutely, you should work. If he's not the right coach, then you find someone else. But the point is, and if we're not the right fit, you know, we point you in another direction to help you find the right fit. But ultimately, at the end of the day, don't put your head in the sand and think you have all the solutions yourself. I think that's a mistake. It's not a good way to live.
Yeah, it comes down to that constant, never-ending improvement. No matter what you do, you always want a better version of yourself, and so I totally agree with you there. Let me ask you to do this for us. Would you give us some contact information for anybody that has any questions or wants to get a hold of you? Would you just give them some contact information and also give me a closing statement, and then I will finish up.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we go. So getting a hold of us, it's very easy. Our company is very easy to get a hold of. Cashpractice.com. That's our company. You go to the website. You can peruse all you want there. If you want to learn more about what we do, quite frankly, the best way of doing that is simply talk to one of our cash practice experts at our company. And the best way to do it is either pick up the phone and call us at 877-343-8950. You could do that. Or you can simply go to cashpractice.com, and there's two things you could do. One is you can click on request a demo, and you could schedule a demo with one of our staff, and they'll take just a few minutes actually initially to find out whether if even a demo makes sense for your practice. And if it does, then they'll schedule some time to spend about 20-30 minutes demoing it for you. Certainly, you could also go to the website, and there's on the homepage, you'll see where it says there's a free mini course. Put in your name and email there, and I think it asks for your phone number too. And simply, it's just going to send you a series of emails of articles that I've written over a period of time that's educational, strictly educational in nature. Telling you about things that are pertinent to learn in running a cash-based practice. That's it. And in closing statement, I'll say this: doctors, ultimately, we're here to help people. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we're here to save that person who needs to be saved, because we're able to offer the greatest healthcare gift that is possible, which is chiropractic, and removing that nerve interference. It serves the patient best if you could help them stay under their treatment plans. It also happens to serve us as practitioners. And we want to make sure you're doing everything you can to make sure that you're keeping your patients, that you're not losing them, that you're not running into those frustrations. So reach out to us. I know that we can help us. No doubt that Dr. Lee can help you as well. There's no doubt about it. So with closing thoughts, Lee, thank you for having me, interviewing me. I appreciate it a lot. Obviously, this gets the word out of what we do as well. So thank you so much for including me in this series. I'm humbled by everybody's accolades and humbled by everybody's comments they make all the time. And be sure to check out, your state associations. I'm traveling all over the place speaking. So you might have the opportunity to come to one of my classes. I know there's a few dates coming up in October, actually, not to put a time frame on when you're watching this video, if you're watching this as a recording, but I know October coming up in 2015, I'm going to be in a lot of Ohio, Indiana, Virginia, Vermont, Georgia. I'm going to be all over the place speaking. So check it out there. You'll probably see in your local state associations convention that you'll see me on the bill speaking. So thanks, Lee. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's our pleasure. Thank you, Miles, and travel safe. I'm going to just pass on my contact information also. Our website is chiropractic1on1.com. Our email address is lawlcc@aol.com. And you can contact me direct if you have any questions or you wish to be coached relative to cash practice or anything else. I will say that we do use Miles's company, Cash Practice Systems, in our own clinic. And I do present time coaching, which means I'm in practice right now. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. My phone number is 760-518-9546, and that is my cell phone, so you'll get me direct. Thanks again, Miles, for everything. I appreciate your information. You did a marvelous job. And everybody stay tuned, because we're going to have another webinar coming up here, and we're going to fill in some more blanks. Have a great day, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.